Welcome back, guys. Hope you all doing great. Well, in this video, we are going to learn how to work with the React State Management Library. See, if you are a beginner who trying to learn the React for very first time, or if you are a beginner who working in the React for quite a long time, right? For you always face that one question. That one question will always comes up, like how do I manage the state properly as my app grows? So in this video, we will start from the basic, like how to work with the state. Then we move up to the use context, Zustand, and finally with the Redux Toolkit. So by the end of this video, you will be clearly know which one to use and when to use for what kind of project I need to go for which kind of state management library. So I'm going to make sure that you understand each and every part of this video, that you completely understood. All right. So I do already have a React project in my hand. So if you're not, please go ahead and start applying a React project with the JavaScript itself. No need of TypeScript, with the JavaScript itself. So let's understand the use state first. What is state? That's the important question that you need to understand. In React, state is just a data that changes over the time. Okay. So for working with the state, React provides you a very custom hook called useState. useState. This is the custom hook that we are going to use to work with the React state itself to store the data. Okay. So make sure that, and the syntax of this, it's going to be, this is the syntax. So basically you can see we are supplying and we are destructuring certain values over here. We are getting a destructured value over here, right? So let me explain what is the syntax, and let me break through all this stuff so you can understand what is state and everything. So first, what we need to do is we need to understand what's exactly happening here in this particular line. So this line, this is the place where we are creating the state in a React component, which basically stores a value and gives a way to update that value. So where we are storing, this is the place where we are storing that value in this variable. And in order to update this variable, the value which is inside that variable, we are using this function to update that. Okay. So useState is a React hook. We all know that. So it lets the component to remember the data, right? So let me show you. For instance, I'm just going to say count. I want to print what exactly the count it does have in its hand. It's going to give me the value because I assigned the default value as 0 to this particular variable, right? To that state. Okay. Now, use state, it's a React hook, but it's a function, right? It's going to return some value. So basically this use states, it's returning the value as an array which carries two different values in it, right? That's why we are capturing it as an array. One is the state value, that's the very first one, and another one is the state update function, that's the second one. Okay, so in our case, which is going to be count and the set count. Okay, so now what we have to do is we just have to write a function to update the state. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have two different buttons, button colon type of button itself, and this is going to be the plus sign, and here I'm just going to say on click, I'm going to call a callback function, then I'm going to say set count. Okay, set count. So what I need to do is I need to access the previous value, then I need to update the current value with the previous value, right? Otherwise the state will not be properly updated and the component will not rendered properly. So I'm going to access the previous value, which is a custom variable, right? And that I'm going to access that previous value, plus I'm going to increment the value with 1 plus 1. Previous value is nothing but whatever the value which I stored in the count, that will be stored in the previous itself, right? That's the simple function parameter. That's it. Okay, then I'm going to duplicate this, then I'm going to bring it into -1. So by this way, when you click this, you can see even without the use effect, the state will get re-rendered automatically. Okay, So this is all about the state, right? This is all about the state. Now the problem is, imagine you having a parent component and the data that needs to go through many child components throughout the end. So what we will do, we will send this state through the props for the child component. Think about it, you have a provider component which is a parent, and inside that provider component I might have multiple child components like 10 to 12 child components. In that I need to have that user data on that 12th child component. What I need to do from the parent, I need to send this user data to one after another. I need to drill it inside every single child components to access it at the end. That's a really hectic. It's going to be a huge problem when you're working with the build a scalable web application, right? This issue is called prop drilling. Instead of prop drilling, this is the place where we use the state management libraries like the useContext, Zustand, and the Redux Toolkit. Managing the state in React can be get confusing if your apps keep on growing, right? So we will understand how to work with the useContext, Zustand, Redux Toolkit with simple explanations and clear comparisons, so that you can it helps you to choose what is the right tool for your project. Okay, so let's start with the use context. So we are going to start with the use context. That's the first one that we are going to start. Okay, so basically the use context is like it's really helpful for a medium size application. Let's say medium size application, use context, it's okay, right? So by this way what we can do, it helps us to avoid the prop drilling. As I said, it helps us to avoid the prop drilling, and it act as the global state, simple global state. That's the key point, that's the key advantage, that's the pros, what we can say, pros. And what are the cons when you're working with this? When you're working with this is not really helpful for the large applications. For larger applications, this could be a huge problem, right? Because the frequent state updates can cause the performance issues. So it will cause the performance issues. Okay, but for the medium size applications, for simple applications, this is considerable. Okay, so now let's talk about the example, like how we can work with the use context and everything. Okay, so in order to work with the use context, so what I'm going to do is, so let's take an example that I want to store the user data, then I need to access it in a multiple child components. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a custom folder over here called hooks, or we can keep it as context, something like that, context. And inside over here I'm going to create myself this user context.jsx, user context.jsx. If you're using TypeScript, go with tsx. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a certain packages which is necessary from the React itself. React, what are the things that we need to have? I need to create a context first. So for that I need this create context, then I need to access the context, so I need this use context hook. Then of course I need to store some value in it, so I'm going to use the use state. So these are the three packages. Okay, so let's assume that what are the things that I need to do? I need to store the username, then I need to store the email, and then whether the user is logged in or not, that's a boolean value that we need to update. Okay, these are the stuffs. Now what I need to do is we're gonna create an so now what we have to do is we have to create the user context. So let's say const user context is equals to, I'm going to create myself the context, create context. Okay, that's the function. Initially we're going to keep the value as null. Okay, so that's the thing. Then over here in, I'm going to say export const, we need the wrap, the provider. So in order to provide the global state throughout the child as a parent component, we need to build that. For that I'm going to create this user provider component which is equals to an arrow function. Okay, it's going to be a component, and it's going to take the prop, because inside this we need to render the children. So we need the children prop, access the children prop. Okay, then here inside over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself the state, use state, which is going to store the user data, and initially that store value, which is going to be the null value. Okay, that's the initial value, and at the end we're going to return some a component which is going to be user context dot provider wrap it, and inside over here let's render the children. And right after this I need to supply the value for that provider component. What are the values that we are going to supply? We're going to supply the user, and we're going to supply that set user as the value, so we can access these two things. Whatever the components which is rendered inside this provider component, we can access these two use as a state user and sets user, these two functions, the function and the value, we can access it. Okay, then right after here what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this, export const use user custom hook, and then I'm going to say const context is equals to use the context. We need to use this context, the user context which we created, then only we can access those. Use that context, which is basically I need to use the user context. Then I'm going to check the condition. If I don't have the context, what I need to do, I need to throw a new error. Basically what I'm going to say, use user must be used inside the user provider. If you are trying to use this user context outside this provider, then it's going to cause as an issue, so we need to handle it properly, so that this way we can handle it properly. If the user try to use this custom hook which is wrapped inside this user provider, then it need to return that context. Okay, so by this way we can, when you're trying to access this use user, we can make it like a little bit safer, and we can instruct the user to use it inside the user provider to handle it properly. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to make sure this user provider, this provider component, that is wrapped the entire application inside in it. So let's jump into the main.jsx, and let me cut this out, and let's bring the user provider, make sure that is imported properly. Then inside we need to supply the children, which is basically our app component. So save it. If everything is running perfectly fine, you should able to still see the same thing which we have in the app.jsx. So I'm just going to delete everything, RAFCE, and let me bring the app. So without any issues, it's re-rendered properly. Now what I'm going to do is, and here I'm going to bring myself a profile component, which I don't have that yet. So I'm going to create myself a new folder here called components, and inside the components I'm going to create the profile.jsx RAFCE, and that is going to be the profile. Save it, and let me bring that profile inside over here. All right, so you should be able to see the profile now. Perfect. Now what I have to do is, if the user is successfully logged in, I need to see the user email username with the email address. If the user doesn't there, I need to display a login button, simply a login, so the user can able to log in by himself. All right, so for that what I need to do is I'm just going to get back over here and say const, I need to access these two things. So for that we created this use user context. Let me bring it. From that use user, I can access the user, and I can access this function called set user, which is exported from that context provider, right? Save it. Now basically this is not necessary here, so I'm going to cut this out and put it inside the profile. This is the place where we needed it. Then I'm going to cut this out from here, and I'm going to bring it up and put it over here. Okay, so that is an import issue, because it should add it with a double dot. I just put it as a single dot, right? So now there is no issues at all. So inside this profile, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check whether the user is available or not. So if I do have the user, then I need to render something. So I'm going to bring a division which is going to render something. If the user data is not there, then I'm going to bring a button with the type of button itself. Okay, just a moment. Okay, sorry for that. So here now what I have to do is I need to create a button, which is the type of button itself, and I'm just going to simply say as login, right? And we all know that we don't have anything in the user state right now because we assign the value as null initially, so I don't have anything over here, right? So if I have something inside this user value, so it's going to render something which is going to be my username, which it's going to be the user dot name itself. Then I'm gonna bring the what's that? We need to wrap this up inside a paragraph tag and paste it. Then I'm just going to bring the email, and here I'm just going to say email. Then I'm gonna bring one more paragraph tag, which is going to be whether the user is status online status, whether the user is logged in or not online. So if you want to get that, we can put that is logged in or not, as well as we can access that variable and we can display it over here. Okay, so whenever I'm clicking this on click, if I click this, I'm gonna get a callback function. That callback function, it's going to set a value to what? To the user. So basically this user is going to take the object as the value. Inside this object, I'm going to assign the name first. For the name, I'm going to assign the name as vetrivel.galaxy. Then another property, which is going to be the email, which I'm going to assign my email address over here. Then I'm going to bring the status, whether the user is logged in or not. I'm just going to simply apply the value as true. Okay. Misty comma over here. So here, if it is true, if the user is true, then I'm just going to say online. If not, I'm just going to say offline, something like that. Because since it's a Boolean value, we need to handle it properly. If it is true, what I need to display. If it not is true, what I need to show. So save it. Now, once I click this login, see the entire states got updated and the entire UI elements is also get shuffled up. Now I'm gonna bring one more button over here, which is going to be saying as button log out. Okay. Okay, so when the user clicks this, I'm just going to say on click. Then I'm gonna change this into set user again into null. So by this way, if you click this, it is going to say like user is not, so it's going to show the button as login, and if I click this, it is going to show the value as like logout. And the beauty is we are accessing this state, which is coming from where? From the user context, and we are accessing it inside the profile.jsx, which is inside the app.jsx component. It's which is a third child, right? So you can access this as a simple global state, and even if in the multiple child components are there, you can access it. But this is really suitable for very small applications, not a very big application, something like the e-commerce store and something like the social media websites. So that makes a little bit complications, performance issues are there. All right, so that's the place. For the mid-level application, we use this third-party library called Zustand. Zustand. Okay, Zustand. Right. So basically, the Zustand is, we use this for the intermediate level. Okay. So for the intermediate level, we use the Zustand. Wait a minute. So when it comes to the Zustand, like working with this is really simple. Like it's very simple. It's very simple. And it doesn't have any kind of provider. You don't need to work with the provider stuffs and all this. So no providers. And the performance, it's excellent. Excellent performance. But the cons, what are the cons? Those are the pros, and the cons are, which is not opinionated. which is not opinionated, then we have a very limited toolings. Very limited toolings in order to work with the state. We can't monitor those states, right? We can access them and use them, but we can't monitor them, right? So Zustand is perfect for mid-sized applications, right? It's used for mid-sized applications, and if you're a user who building a solo, a complete web app in a solo, for solo developers, it's really useful. Okay, so that's where the Zustand takes the action, right? Like basically, this is not a built-in one, but useContext is the built-in one. This is not a built-in one; it's a third-party library, and the boilerplate code it's very low. You don't have the default boilerplate codes to work with. Then when it comes to performance compared to the use context, it's literally high. It's a very good in performance wise. And for the when it comes to developer tools, we don't have any kind of developer tools for the use context, and we have a very limited tool context for developer tools for this Zustand. Okay, and the scalability, it's medium only, not high but medium. It's for the solo developers, it's okay. Okay, so let's try to understand the how to work with the Zustand, like how to achieve the same stuff what we did right now, how to get that by using this Zustand. For that, I'm going to stop the server. Then I'm going to add pnpm add Zustand. Add this. This is the package that we need to add. Clear it. Then I'm going to run the application pnpm run dev. Okay. So here I'm going to bring the source. Inside the source, I'm going to bring the hooks. Inside the hooks folder, I'm going to create myself a new hook called user store.js. userstore.js. That's the thing. Okay. Now inside this userstore.js, first I need to import from where? From the Zustand. From the Zustand, I'm going to bring this create instance. Then I'm going to create a store, right? Let's say export const use user store is equals to, I'm going to use this create. Okay, create, call this function. Then I'm going to get the set parameter outside of that function. It's going to return a value which is an object. Okay, this is the thing. So basically set is the parameter of this function, and it is going to return a value as an object. Inside this objects, we're going to have a different props. First, the state value, which is going to be the user. The initial value is going to be null. Then I'm going to have a function called set user function, which is going to set the value. So it's going to be a callback function. So that function is going to receive the user as the parameter inside that function. Then it's going to set that user value to the state user value. So that's the reason we use this set function. Set function, it helps you to update the data. So which is basically going to be an object. Then we're going to update the user data to this user state, right? So instead of writing like this, we are writing directly something like this user, because since the both value are same, you don't have to confuse yourself. So then I'm going to have one more function, which is going to be the logout function. It's going to be a callback function itself. Then I'm just going to say use the set function, which is going to update the set user value as null. So get the user value and update it into null. Okay, that's the beauty of this. That's it. You don't have to do rest of the stuff. Nothing. You don't need to do anything else. Now let's get back to the same profile.jsx itself. Instead of getting those two different values from here, I'm gonna comment that. Then I'm going to extract those values, destructure it as an object from the user store. I'm going to access those values itself. So which is going to be the user, then which is going to be the set user. Then of course, finally, I'm going to get this logout function itself. Make sure that logout function is copied, and let me paste it perfectly over here. Okay, now refresh it. Since I don't have this user, I will have this login function. So button is displayed properly over there. Okay. All right. So all right. So let's check it out. So if I click login, still it's going to work as exactly the same way, because we are not using this use user, because we are using the user from set user, which is provided by the user store. It's both are giving the same output. Let's check this out with the logout function. Instead of this, I'm going to simply supply the logout reference. That's it. Now if I click this, it should remove the user. If I click it again, it is going to log in the user. This time, compared to the use context, we created a very limited number of lines of code. See, that's it. We don't have a provider component. We don't have a custom hook in order to access them. This is really simple when compared to the use context, right? I hope you understand how to work with the Zustand. This is okay for the mid-level application, but when you compare to the large scale application, so that's where the problem appears, right? So why the Zustand is better? Because it have a less boilerplate code, and the performance wise it's literally huge. Okay, and that's the reason it is suitable for the medium apps. Okay, because we don't have a provider, we don't have a context wrapping, we directly accessing the state, global state through the hooks. Okay, so when it comes to enterprise level apps, Redux Toolkit is the highly recommended stuff. Okay, so let's start working on the Redux Toolkit. Okay, so I'm gonna close this user context main index.js user store. Close this. Now what we are going to discuss, we are going to discuss about the Redux Toolkit. Oops, Redux Toolkit. Okay, so why we need the Redux Toolkit? Because that gives us the centralized store where we can access every single state that we're going to use it as a global, which we want to make it as a globally accessible. Okay, and we do have a very powerful dev tools to work with the states. Okay, we have a very powerful dev tools to work with the states. Then we have a predictable state updates. Predictable state updates. Okay, when it comes to cons, of course we do have some cons, as well as it needs a large number of setup, more setup. We need the learning curve. When it comes to Redux Toolkit, you need to have some learning curve. That's the disadvantage when it comes to this Redux Toolkit. Okay, so Redux Toolkit shines in the enterprise level applications, right? So comparatively to the use context and the Zustand, Redux Toolkit is the boilerplate code wise, it's medium, and the performance wise it's literally high when compared to both of other than those two tools. And the developer tools, we do have a high level of developer tools only for the Redux Toolkits only, and the scalability it's literally high. Even compared to the Zustand, scalability it's literally high. Okay, so that's the reason we are using the Redux Toolkit in the enterprise level applications. Okay, so let's see how to work with that. So let's see the packages. What are the packages that I want to install first? So I'm going to stop the server and I'm going to install pnpm add react redux, then at redux.js slash toolkit. These are the packages that we want to use. React Redux and at redux.js slash toolkit. Hit the enter. All right, so it has been installed. Then let's run the application pnpm run dev. All right, so let's get back into the app.jsx, and yeah, inside this source folder. So first what we need to do, we need to create the slices. So basically when it comes to Redux Toolkit, right, we're gonna keep it as a slice, a single slice, which is going to maintain the user a particular data state value and all those actions which belongs to that state value itself. Think about it that you are going to maintain all the user data in a single place, users data, and along with the actions which is required for the user data in a common place. That is called a slice. So here inside the context, I'm going to create myself a new folder called slices. And inside this slices folder, I'm going to create myself a new slice called user slice.js. Okay, and here I'm going to create myself import a folder package, sorry, import a package which is from at Redux Toolkit. From there, I'm going to bring this create slice, this create slice function. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define myself the initial state, which is going to be the user state, and it's going to carry the null value in it. Initially, it's going to be null. Then what I'm going to do, const user slice is equals to create slice, open it, bring an object in it, the name of the slice, which is going to be user itself. Then we are going to supply the initial state. What is the initial state? User, which is null. So I'm supplying this object into this initial object, or what I have to do, I have to set that value over here, user, which is going to be null, something like this, which I don't want to do that. So that's the reason I created the initial state separately itself, and we are supplying the initial state. Then we need to supply the reduces, open it. This is the place where we have to define those actions. So set users, logout users, and anything with a payload, you have to do all those actions needs to be represented over here. So first in this case, which is going to be the set user, which is going to be a function, right? Of course, it is going to be a function. So this function is going to receive a payload, which is from the outside. So we need to access the local state. Then we need to get the action, which is triggered from the outside, because inside the action only we can collect the payload. So basically we're going to update the state value, which is the user, state.user. From the action, I need to receive the payload. Then I need to apply that payload over here. Okay. Then right after here, I'm going to bring the logout function, which is going to be a function. Open it. And this function, I'm not going to send any action payload. I'm just going to receive the state value inside this function. Then I'm just going to say state.user, which is equals to null. That's it. Now, all I have to do is to export all those actions as a separate actions. So const, send it as an object. From the user slice, I'm can access the actions. Basically, these actions will return as an object. So what are the objects that I need? I need this user, set user, and the logout functions returned as an object. Perfect. Then by default, I need to export default user slice dot reducer, because we need to map this reducer with the global store. So that's the reason we need to export it defaultly. Okay, now we have that user slice. Then let's get back to the store. I need to create a store. So inside this context, I'm going to create myself a global store.js. Perfect. So here I'm just going to import those from at Redux Toolkit. From the Redux Toolkit, I need this configure store function. Then let's export it. So export const store equals to configure store, open it, and send an object. Okay, inside here I need to configure the reducers, open it, because we need to combine all those slices reducers commonly and supply it into the provider component. We can't push the different reducers separately to our global provider component. So in order to bring all those reducers in a common place, that's the place where we use the configured store, and we configure all the reducers over here, and we push it as a single object, single instance into our global component. Okay. So in this case, which is going to be user, and we need to bring that user reducer, which is coming from where? Reducer, not use reducer, user reducer. We need to import that. So import user reducer in the name of user reducer from where? Dot slash slices slash user slice. From the user slice, basically we are bringing the user slice in the name of user reducer. Then we are combining it and putting it into the our store. Okay, this is how we need to do for the Redux toolkit. because we for a bigger application, think about it, for a e-commerce application, you have a product cart and we have the cart item, then we have the user state, then we have the theme provider states. All of them will be maintained as a separate slices, and separate actions will be there. They will be configured commonly inside this place. Then they need to be pushed into our provider component in a global store. So I need to jump into our main.tsx. We need to wrap this entire application inside a provider. So I'm going to comment this. Then right after here, I'm going to bring this provider component from where? From the React Redux itself. From the React Redux itself, we're going to bring that. Then we need to supply our app into it. And for this provider app, we do have the store. What store that this component is going to use? So the store, which is going to be the store itself, which we have inside our store.js, this one. So we need to use that one. So make sure that is being imported properly. From where? From the context store.js. Save it. And now if I run this application, of course it will work perfectly, because we don't have the user state, which is initially the user state in the user is null. And we have this set user function and the logout function. Okay, now if I click the login function, what happens? It is going to use the set user function from where? This user store, right? We don't want to use this user store, because we have two different custom hooks provided by the React Redux. One, which is going to be the use selector, which helps you to select the state from the global store. And we have this use dispatch, which helps you to trigger the action through this dispatch instance. So let me show you. So from import from React Redux, from the React Redux, I'm going to access these two custom hooks, use dispatch and use selector, these two. And I'm going to access those things. So const user state, I need to access the user state from our global store. So using the use selector, which is going to access the entire global state. So let's get the state. From the state, I need to return only the user state.user. I don't want to access anything else. Okay. So from the user state, we need to access the user. Okay. And let me print the state now, console.log user. If I get into the inspect elements and if I click the console, it's saying we have an object. See, we are getting an object. Inside the object, we are receiving the user, because when you access the state.user, it is going to access this user. Now inside this user, we do have one more object named user, because this is stored as the object, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say user.user. Now if you check it out, you will get the value as null. See, we are getting the value as null. And of course we do have the tools. As I said, we have a developer tools, right? So for that, we have this React dev tools. You search for React dev tools, you can see this this in the Git Chrome web store. You have this React dev tools over here, right? You just have to add that extension. Once you add that, if you are using the React dev tools, React Redux Toolkit in your website, you can see that developer tool highlighted, right? Once I click this, I can able to see all the states which is inside this web application. See, user state, user, which is carrying on the user object, which is currently null. Okay, this the beauty of using the Redux Toolkit, where I can monitor each and every actions, and I can see the difference between the states previous and the current, right? So these are the dev tools which I'm talking about. Okay, now we know how to access the state. Then we need to get back the action. So const dispatch is equals to use dispatch. Using this custom hook, we're going to dispatch the actions. So what I'm going to do is, the set user function needs to be wrapped inside this dispatch function. Using this dispatch function, we're going to trigger that set user function. Okay, we're going to trigger that set user function. All right. save it. Now if the user clicks this, set user is not defined. Okay. Okay, so of course we will get this set user as a not defined, because we know that, because we need to import them from, what I'm going to do is, let me try to import it automatically. Yes, if I use the auto import, you can see it is coming from context slicer, user slicer. So from the user slices, we need to import those actions, set user, then I need to get the logout action itself, right? But these actions needs to be dispatched through the dispatch function, then only it will work. So that's the reason we are using this dispatch set user. And for the logout as well as dispatch, it's going to be a callback function, dispatch, oops, logout function, like this. Now if I click this login, and if I check it out over here, see what action it's been triggered. From the user slice, we triggered the action called set user. If you click this, you can see when it is being triggered. You can see the timestamps and each and everything, and the initial state, what is the initial state, and or after this action, how the state value get updated. See, like this, right? And you can see the actions, list of actions. What is the payload that we supplied to that action? See, this is the payload, and this is the payload which we are receiving inside over here. All right. So, and now if I click this logout, if I click this logout, you can see one more action has been triggered, which is use logout. And if you click the state, you can see the user value is assigned to null, right? So that's the beauty of working with the React Redux toolkit. Okay, so I hope you understand all the difference between the these React state management library, like the useContext, Redux, Zustand, and the Redux toolkit. Okay, so yeah, this is it. If you have any questions, and if you have if I explain anything in a different way, leave that thing in the comment sections, and I'm happy to help you out. And if you have any other concepts in your mind, leave that also in the comment section. And we are lining up a different project which is going to be uploaded in this channel, so stay tuned.